Hi, everybody. Good evening. This is Jonathan Alderson. For those of you who weren't here in another webinar with us, or who may not know who I am fully, I just wanted to share with you a little bit, just for a moment, so you know who I am and who's talking to you tonight. So again, my name is Jonathan Alderson, and I've been working in the field of autism with families directly for around 25 years, worked with about 3,000 children right across the spectrum, and of all different ages. It has been my passion. And in fact, I was just talking with one of our team members the other day, and I was explaining what my passion was. And I said, my passion has been about bringing more love into the world. And she sort of looked, and this is true story. She said, "Ah," kind of like, that's cute, right? That's a very sweet. And I said, no, I'm serious. I'm really committed to helping people on the spectrum feel loved and feel accepted. And it's not that there aren't people around them who love them. As parents, you deeply love your children, of course, but it doesn't always maybe come across. Sometimes life gets in the way. We're busy. Sometimes situations happen, so we feel frustrated. And I think what we have to learn in any relationship, whether it's with our spouse, our own parents, our colleagues who we work with, or our children on the spectrum, we come to learn that loving someone involves loving them in a way that they can feel and sense and know and understand. So I really want that for people on the spectrum, as you would for anybody in the world, right? But especially this group of people, to really feel kind of accepted for their difference and loved and appreciated for their uniqueness. And it's kind of really at the heart of what I do. So some of these photos here that you see in front of you are of myself working with, playing with, loving a whole number of different kids, and you can see whether it's at a table doing some kind of ABA kind of work. By the way, that little picture down in the corner, the left corner, I don't know if on your screen it's maybe too small. If some of you are watching this on a phone, it's probably super small, but is a little boy just here in Southern Ontario that I worked with probably about 18 years ago. And he is now in Europe touring with a ballet company. Isn't this crazy? This guy was diagnosed on the spectrum of autism. We worked with him for about 3 years, did a lot of intensive stuff, and he just so super blossomed, ended up going to sort of through school, successful high school, and ended up becoming like a phenomenal, terrific ballet dancer. And so I spoke with him just before he left for Europe. Uh, um, and we had a little chat and kind of checked in. So it's really cool to kind of be in touch also with kids that I've worked with years ago and see what they're doing and how they're doing. So that's it. I would say a rare case, but an interesting one. I just remembered when I saw that picture there on the screen, I thought I'd share that. Okay, so let's jump into building rapport. And why building rapport? Now, for those of you who are here tonight, you'll have your own reasons why you're here, why building rapport is interesting for you. Maybe you're just curious, but my guess is that there's something around having rapport, building rapport, making a connection with the child in your life that you want to learn more about. And uh, uh, I want to talk about rapport for just a minute, and then we're going to do a little, just ask you a couple of questions so we could get to know to you just a little bit, so I can customize this for those of you who are here with us tonight. But when we think about rapport, again, there's no question that you already have rapport with your child. There's no question that you already love your child. So there's not a question about that. But the question is, do you have enough rapport in any one moment that your child is receptive to you insofar as that they're willing to follow an instruction, that they're willing to go in a different way than they're going? You might have to say, hey, we're going this way, buddy, but he wants to go that way. That they're willing to be guided to learn something new. This is how we do it. This is how you open the toothpaste, or this is how you make a grilled cheese sandwich, or this is how you do math. I know when I was learning math from my dad, I clearly remember sitting down at the dining room table and feeling like I wanted to run away because I wasn't receptive. I was so, I just like, I wasn't receptive. I remember that, not being receptive to being taught math by my father in particular. And so that idea of being receptive, that idea of not being defensive. And when you're working with someone on the autism spectrum, you'll already know that timing is important, meaning that if they're engaged in a self-stimulating behavior, if they're involved in a repetitious behavior, if they are really super focused on something, it might be a video that they're into or a book that they're reading, or maybe it might be something outside of a window that they're looking at, that in those times they're not as receptive to you. It's not a great time to make a command or to tell them something important, what's happening next. So in the programs that I run and the therapy teams that I train, we spend a heck of a lot of time actually learning how to determine the level of receptivity of a person with autism that we're working with. In other words, are they kind of available? Right? Are they kind of available? I want to give you just a quick analogy here, by the way, so that you kind of get on board with where we're going. When you go to order a coffee, if you're a coffee drinker or maybe just at a snack bar, whatever your thing is, but when you go to a counter to order something, of course you're going to pay attention to the sales clerk and are they paying attention to you? Are they receptive? You could use that word, right? So sometimes I go here in Canada to Tim Hortons, I might go to Starbucks sometimes, and you walk up to the counter and they're not always receptive, right? They might be making coffee, so their back is turned to you. You can't place the order. And of course, you're not going to say, I'd like a latte, please, to the thin air in front of you. That's silly because no one's going to hear you. So you would wait usually until someone comes and they look up and say, hi, can I take your order? So now they're receptive. They're giving you all the signals that they're receptive for you to place an order, right? And so that's what we do. Now, for some of you, and like myself, if sometimes I'm in a rush, I might not just wait until someone's receptive, but I might actively go after getting them to be receptive. So I might kind of wave or say, hey, I need to order, or something like that, trying to get their attention. But still, I'm going to wait until they're at least turned towards me and smiling and looking before I place that order. So that's a kind of idea of receptivity. And yet, and it's something we all do. I'm sure you do this very well, and you're expert at that, understanding that it only makes sense to place an order when someone's receptive. And yet, with our children, in the course of daily life and the busyness of getting ready for school and coming back from school and doing laundry and all those things, I think that we often place an order, if you will, make commands and important instructions when our kids aren't receptive for all sorts of reasons. Maybe they're busy, maybe they're distracted, maybe because of their different sensory needs or the processing, they're not receptive. And so it leads to them not hearing and not having success. It leads to us feeling frustrated or like our kids don't care, all sorts of different feelings. So tonight we want to talk about how do you build rapport to a level that you have receptivity so that those communications are just a lot smoother. You have a lot more success. Your child has more success. And I'm going to share with you just two strategies tonight. So it won't be overwhelming. And these two things, if you do these two things, it really will make a very big difference. A very big difference. These are strategies that I've learned over 25 years, used with literally hundreds and hundreds of kids. They work very well. I'm so excited to share them with you. Okay, but so that we can know a little bit more about you, we're going to throw up a survey. This is the same one that we had the other night. So if you were here with us before, we'd really appreciate still that you just answer very quickly. So we're going to throw that up now. My a colleague and team member, Ragia, who you heard just a minute ago, she's here helping me facilitate that. So she's going to throw it up right now. And what you're going to see is a couple of questions. There we go. And you can just, if you just on your right-hand side, I'm doing it now for myself. On the right-hand side, you can just scroll down and there's 3 questions to answer. Okay, so if you want to just click on that, that gives us a sense of kind of the age group that we're going to talk about tonight and the diagnosis, right? And then just, yeah, the third question is something kind of around where you're at as a parent, kind of where when you're feeling, as you kind of feeling some kind of confused, clear, overwhelmed, happy. Okay, I'm seeing some answers. That's great. Perfect. Thanks, guys. And Ragia will just, as we say, publish those so you can kind of see the results. You can see those there now. And then good stuff. Okay, so it looks like we have sort of what I call a kind of middle-aged set. It's not the youngest set of kids, but most of you are kind of 5 or up. So I'll be kind of gearing my talk to that set, okay? And ASD on the spectrum, which is what we typically have, yeah. And some of you, yeah, another diagnosis as well. Okay, good stuff. So, Raghi, if we just switch back to the presentation, thank you very much. And let me just say two quick things, guys. First of all, there's a Q&A. We're going to have time for question answers, and I really want to encourage you. I'm going to leave more time than I have in the past for Q&A. We did a webinar this afternoon, and we had some great questions, and we actually ran out of time. So I just want to make sure that your personal questions about your child and your situation are answered, even if it's not entirely on this topic. I'd like you to just have the opportunity to have someone, kind of lean in and listen a little bit and get your questions answered. So please, you can type them in, and Ragia will be looking at the questions as they come up and feeding them over to me so we can get them answered for you. Okay, so please feel free to go ahead at any time and enter a question that I could answer for you. All right. So I said that there's just two techniques that I want to teach you, two ideas. And here are our two, we call them our two great ideas because they really are. They're great in terms of, I think they're easy to understand. They're not kind of rocket science, but they're also great because they lead to great outcomes for your child and for you. This is about a rapport. Rapport is between two people, right? So the great outcome is for both of you, which is exciting. It's fun. It's wonderful. So here's the two ideas. I'm going to kind of go into them a little bit with some stories. But the first one is to focus on reinforcing what you want in your relationship with your child. We're talking about relationships tonight. Reinforce what you want in your relationship with your child instead of being the enforcer of what you don't want. Instead of being the enforcer of what you don't want. We're going to talk about that in just a minute and kind of go deeper, but just start thinking about that. How much time do I spend kind of enforcing the law, enforcing the rules, getting onto my kid about what, they're not doing right, and what that kind of stuff, is versus being a cheerleader for what I want and reinforcing all the things that are happening that I like, that are good, that kind of stuff. And this is important because you can either make rapport or break rapport. You can either make rapport or break rapport on this idea alone, on this idea alone. And just for fun, by the way, I'm just going to say this because in working with families, of course, at the center of a lot of work that I do is parenting. And we want to help happy families. There's this expression, happy families, happy children. I mean, it's just how it is. And so, inevitably, there's one of the spouses, and it's not always a wife and it's not always a husband, but one of them, sometimes both, will say, I'm kind of struggling in the relationship, in part because this person here, as they point to their spouse, just constantly focuses on what I'm not doing right? Constantly focusing on what I'm not doing right. And you might have that from a colleague too, maybe someone that you're working with. If you're working in this field, you might be working in an autism center, you might be working in a physiotherapy clinic, you might be a teacher. And so you might have colleagues that kind of a little bit focus on what you're not doing right. And they kind of come to you and talk to you when things aren't going right, but they don't often cheer and celebrate you. And you can ask yourself, how much rapport do I feel with someone that is focusing on what I am doing right and celebrating me versus what I'm not doing right so much and what they want me to change. So even just starting at that point, just with that point. And again, if you're a parent or a teacher or a physiotherapist, it doesn't matter. This is not just for parents. Think about the child or the children that you work with and ask yourself, is my general framework on enforcing, kind of keeping the kids doing the right thing by enforcing, sort of certain rules and regulations and pointing out what, hey, Johnny, need you to sit down. We can't talk so much. Oh, let's not be so busy in line. We got to be in a straight line, and all of these kinds of ideas, and think, how much are they hearing what they're not doing right versus what they're doing right? So that's reinforce versus enforce. We're going to dive into it a little bit more. Okay, the second thing real quickly is to participate with a child in what they're doing versus to supervise a child in what they're doing. Very different relational experiences. Very different to have someone kind of watch you do something and comment on it. Oh, that's a lovely picture you're drawing. Well, keep going. You're doing a great job, a teacher might say. That's very different than having a teacher sit down across from you at the table, grab colors, and start to color. In fact, a lot of kids, when they see a teacher sitting down to play the game with them, super start to take interest. By the way, I go into classrooms and I sit around and I watch. I'm asked to come sometimes to get a baseline of a child in a classroom so I can go and teach the therapist team. Or sometimes I'm invited by principals, vice principals, teachers to come and say, hey, Jonathan, can you come and teach our crew? In fact, a couple of months ago, I did a morning presentation, a 2-hour presentation at a Montessori school for about 35 Montessori teachers that came from they came from 3 different schools, and they got together as a professional development day. And we had laughed a lot. It was terrific. We laughed a lot about kind of situations that happened for teachers in schools. But anyway, what I'm getting at is when you start to participate, and you'll know this if you're a teacher or a parent, when you actually get down on the ground and play with the kids, you just create a whole different level of rapport, and there's different kind of vibe that happens, a connection, than when you're supervising. So that's that kind of thing. Okay. Let's just dive in then to reinforce and enforce. And we're just gonna we won't spend too much time on these, but we'll kind of just flesh it out a little bit. I want to give you some of the strategies of how to do this. Okay. Oh, I see on my screen that I haven't lined up. Oh, I haven't lined up reinforcer, but that's supposed to be obviously above that little yellow banner. So the enforcer is the policeman or the policewoman, and the reinforcer is the sort of celebrator and the banner. Okay. Police have a little citation book that says, don't speed, don't swear in public, don't do this, don't do that. And it's totally possible as a parent or a teacher that you sort of enter the room in the morning and you got to ask yourself, which hat am I wearing? Am I wearing my police hat, or am I wearing my celebration cheerleader hat? I don't know what kind of hat a cheerleader wears, but some kind of hat that's kind of like, yay. And what do you sort of scope out for? Right? What are your eyes looking for? Our eyes see what our brains are looking for. That's how it is. If you're hungry and your body's feeling hungry and your brain is telling you go get food, you start looking for food. That's how it is. So do I walk into the class or into my child's bedroom or into the kitchen in the morning and say, hey, oh guys, why are you making such a mess? Because I'm right away seeing the mess, and I'm right away saying, why you guys have to spill milk and Cheerios all over? Now, you might say, Jonathan, what's the alternative? If I walked into a kitchen and saw milk all over and Cheerios all over, why wouldn't I comment on that right away? And I might say, it's not an issue to comment on that. That might even be appropriate. But maybe you would start with what is happening. You guys know the cup half full, cup half empty kind of idea. So you might say, hey, you guys, you know what? I love that the two of you, my little 3-year-old and my little 7-year-old, are trying to get yourselves breakfast. You're trying to be independent. You're serving yourself breakfast just like I asked you to do. And I'm so happy about that. So you're cheering what you want. You do want them to be independent. You want them to try and proactively get themselves breakfast. And then you'll say, so let's have a little chat about how you guys could do that and put less Cheerios on the table and more Cheerios in the bowl. Because I got some great ways we could do that. You guys want to learn how to get more Cheerios in your bowl? And every kid is going to go, yeah. And that's a very different approach to building rapport and having them receptive to what I'm going to ask them to do, which is clean up and be more careful and all that stuff. Then if I start with, guys, you're making a big mess. Come on, we can't do that. We're wasting Cheerios. And what happens when the brain hears that is I shut down. I get defensive, right? I don't want to hear what I did, what I'm doing wrong. I don't want to hear what's wrong. I might have to, but I don't want to. And so we get defensive. We stop listening, and it doesn't work. So one way to build rapport with someone is to lead with what is happening right. This isn't a trick. It's not a psychology kind of hack. This is just how humans work. It's how it is. It's how it is. How do you build rapport? You let someone know what they're doing right. You let them know what you appreciate. You recognize an effort they're making. Hey, Billy, wow, I see that you're really trying to make a beautiful birthday card for grandma. That is so sweet of you. It's so awesome. And um, making that, I thought it was very creative too, that you're trying to make a birthday card for grandma using the kitchen tablecloth, and you've colored all over the tablecloth. And I don't even know if there's an envelope big enough for that tablecloth, but it was an interesting idea. Now here's the thing, Billy, and then I might talk about why the tablecloth is not a birthday card for grandma, and we're going to have to wash it. Hopefully we can get the crayon out of the tablecloth. I hope that some of you are laughing at this, because this is a real thing that happened. um, Creative kids out there. So building rapport through leading with what's going on. But let's dive just a little bit deeper for a moment. So one, it's a mindset. What am I looking for? Write that down. What do I look for? Are my eyes open to seeing what is happening, or are my eyes mostly monitoring what isn't happening? Now, for those of you, and I'm aware because I see a question there. Thank you for posting a question um, from a teacher that we have here, and I'm just going to speak just a moment to the teachers here this evening and say that, of course, in a classroom, especially, and in schools, whatever kind of school or environment you're in, there's things like safety protocols. You have to make sure kids are safe. There's school rules that you have to follow, even if you don't always agree with them as a staff, but you do because you're part of a school board or a bigger organization. So there's limitations in some ways, right, to where you can focus and where you don't focus. So again, I just want to repeat: A, I want to recognize that, but B, I want to repeat that it's not, I'm not suggesting to not say get in line, or to don't say you can't write on the walls or you can't run down the hallways or something. I'm just saying how you lead and what you focus on makes a really big difference in terms of building rapport and getting their attention. One of the biggest issues I hear from teachers when it comes to children with autism, and they say is, I like the child, I'm fine to have him in my classroom, but I just can't get his attention. I can't get him to kind of participate and get him to go along with stuff. This is what we're talking about. We're talking about building rapport. And one of the hardest jobs is a teacher, actually, is to try and build rapport with a child with autism, because you often don't have the time. That's what I hear from teachers all the time. I don't have the time. So I'm giving you strategies that actually don't take any more time. It doesn't take any more time to say, hey, wow, it looks like you're trying to have a lot of fun with your friends. And I'm so proud of you for wanting to play with your friends. Now, in this school, the kind of play that we do is always gentle play. I know you're trying to play, but you're being really aggressive and you're pushing. And that's a different kind of play that we don't do in this school, because some people, they won't like it and they won't want to play. So I'm still giving my message. You can't push, you can't be aggressive and stuff. But I started with, hey, it looks like you're trying to have fun with your friends. If that's true. I mean, if that's not true, you can't say that, obviously. But in many cases, there's something that you can focus on that can work. Okay. So let's talk about what being a reinforcer is. A reinforcer is someone, right out of the books of behavioral science, that reinforces what you want more of. So if you see a child with autism who's focused and reading a book and you want more of that behavior, if they're otherwise a hyperactive child or a distracted child, then you want to walk right over and reinforce that behavior. And you've heard of that before. You already know that as parents and teachers. This is nothing new for you. But what I'm telling you is something you might not always recognize, is by reinforcing the things you want, you're also building rapport. Okay. It's not just, oh, I'm reinforcing the sitting down, reading a book behavior. That's the behavioral science part. But the social psychology part is when we reinforce something that we like in someone else, it feels good. It feels good for us and it feels good for them. And that mutual feel goodness builds rapport. It feels nice to be told something nice. And it feels nice because it's almost always in a gentle voice. When a teacher says, hey, Billy, come on, sit down, the voice tone is almost 100% going to be different than when they say, hey, Billy, thanks for putting your stuff away. It's just a different tone because it's coming from a different attitude, a different space in your mind. And kids hear that. And so one leads to less rapport and one leads to more rapport. So the more that you can reinforce the little things that are happening, the more you'll have rapport. By the way, and it stores up just like in a bank, the more that you'll have rapport and receptivity when you really need it. So when you then need to tell Billy, so you've said, Billy, thanks for this. Billy, thanks for that. Billy, you did well with this. Billy, I'm really proud of you. Hey, buddy, you're really staying focused. Hey, I love the way that you're sharing the crayons today and you do it like on a regular schedule. And then when you need to say, hey, Billy, I need you to not run so much in the classroom right now, please, because we're reading a book. So I need you to sit down. So then when you have to do a corrective behavior, he's going to be more receptive and willing because you built up rapport credits. Does that make sense? Very simple, but this stuff really, really works. Okay. Last thing I want to say about enforcer versus reinforcer. See here on the screen, I don't know if you can see, but it says model, motivate, and celebrate. And under that, it says campaign for what you do want. We've been talking a lot about focusing on what you don't want versus what you do want. Campaign for what you do want. And I use this, I use this word a lot, campaign, because I think about when there's campaigns for things. It could be a political campaign. It could be a campaign to raise money, for cancer research or something. And when there's campaigns going on, you see it everywhere. Like there's big signs, there's billboards, there's maybe radio advertisements, TV advertisements, and it's sort of around you. And everyone knows when it's, I don't know, Pride Month, or again when there's a fundraiser or something. And so when a parent tells me, hey, Jonathan, we really want our child to remember to leave his shoes there, or in a school, it might be, I really need this kid to like put his lunchbox away. He never does. He leaves a big mess and then he goes running off. And so I'll say to them, well, what's your campaign about it? And the teacher or the parent might say, well, what do you mean a campaign? I mean, I've told them a bunch of times. I say, okay, but we know, especially with the children with autism, that just verbal communication, if that's what you're relying on, is just telling them a bunch of times, it may not happen for a whole bunch of processing reasons, attention reasons, all sorts of stuff. So you want to go for something, you really campaign for it. And that means coming from all sorts of angles. So what if we came up with the put your lunchbox away after you eat in the lunchroom song? And we started to hum it a little bit. Might not be appropriate for a 12-year-old. That might be embarrassing, but for a younger child, could work. The put your lunchbox away song. Maybe you wouldn't do it in front of everyone, but maybe you practice it. What if we come up with a social story? Many of you know what those are, but we take some pictures of that process. But in my program, we don't do it clinically and sort of like step one, stand up, step two, put your lunchbox. We'll make a little nice story about it. Billy loves to eat lunch in his table, and his friends do too. And they're all sitting around and they're enjoying their snack. And when they're done, they're always remember to put their lunchbox away. And so you sort of have a story that's motivating and has some enthusiasm in it, some positive affirmation statements with some cool pictures. So that's a story. So we might have a song, we might have a story. How about posters? Posters that campaign for what you want. What about little table napkins at lunch that say, I always put my lunchbox away on a napkin? You can literally get napkins printed. You could have some of the senior students in grade 7 and grade 8 make some, a dozen of these napkins every week. And the napkin gets placed down with a lunch and it's with a little reminder on it. I mean, there's so many ways that you can campaign for what you want. And this builds rapport and gets you more of what you want, but it builds rapport because the child feels supported. Okay, let's go on to number 2. By the way, again, if you have any questions on this stuff, please pop it. Let's go ahead and write it in on any of this stuff. We're gonna take some time to answer it. Okay, supervise versus participate. And again, one of the teachers on posted, it turns out, guess what? That these are 2 pictures that I found of in classrooms, and you can see that they're in classrooms. So although the majority of people attending the webinars are parents, we definitely have professionals. So that's why we put pictures like this in. And again, the work that I've done in schools. So here's 2 teachers, and both of these teachers are friendly teachers. They both have smiles. They're both being attentive to the children. So they're both doing correct things. And these are both, situations that could occur in a classroom. But one of them is more supervisory, and you see the one that's a bit more supervisory. And this is more common. Maybe not sitting in a chair staring at a student so much, but maybe walking around the room. Why? Because you have other kids to deal with, right? Other kids to take care of, other kids to educate. Most teachers aren't one-on-one with a child. So we end up getting in supervisory mode. And at home, you may have other children, siblings of your child with autism that you got to attend to, but you certainly have chores to do. You might be working from home. You have your own career. You have a spouse that you need to interact with, phone calls to make, all sorts of stuff that get in the way of you participating with your child. And so you end up kind of supervising. But I want to tell you just a story. I'm working with a young family here in Toronto, and they have a little 4.5. He's almost 5 years old. He's going to turn 5 in just a month. Almost 5-year-old guy, little boy with autism. And I was asking them, I'm working with them on a regular basis, and I was asking them, what's one of the biggest challenges that I could help you with? And they said, Jonathan, it's really the morning. In morning time, we struggle. We struggle on a lot of reasons. The main reason is getting our little guy ready to go to school is such a struggle. We feel like it's a battle, and it's a tug of war in a lot of things. And it's taking a lot of time, so much so that we often even don't really get through breakfast. And I said, well, listen, sounds like a lot's going on. I really want to help you. If it's okay with you, I'd like to come to your house early in the morning so I could watch the whole morning thing, like right from the very beginning. Would that be okay with you? And they said, we would love that. Wow, we haven't had a professional offer us to do that, to come so early. And it's okay with us if you see our personal stuff. So we're open to it if you're willing to do it. I said, let's do this, right? I work with a very small number of families, so I'm able to kind of carve that time out. So I show up at 7:15. I'd ask them what time I should be there. They said 7:15. So I knock on the door and they open it. And both the mom and the father, one of the first things I noticed is both the mom and the dad were fully dressed like they're ready to go to work. And I thought, wow, gosh, that's interesting because this is your beginning of your morning routine. But maybe they wanted to be that they didn't want me maybe to see them in their pajamas. I get that. But so I kind of checked that out. And they both ended up telling me, well, Jonathan, uh, we're fully dressed like this every day at this time. I said, oh, okay. So I guess you guys get up super early. They said, well, we do it. We'd love to sleep in a little bit more or whatever, but we do it because we want to be super ready because it takes so long to get our kid ready that we can't afford then to be late for work and stuff. And I said, okay, well, let me watch what's going on. So then they went to wake up their son, and I watched the whole procedure. And it was really, 2 things are really clear. One is this child really had very little clue as to what he should be doing. And one of the reasons, I believe, is he didn't have a model. So he was an only child, but his parents were always fully dressed, teeth brushed, had bathed, everything they needed to do before he woke up. So he had never, I believe, in the 4 years of his life, seen someone else brush their teeth. He had never in the 4 years of his life seen his father pee in the toilet. Didn't know. Like, how's a guy going to figure that out? He hadn't seen someone, as far as I know, pull on his pants or his socks. So he didn't have that model. But the second really big thing that was going on was he was supervised. by his parents, the whole thing. So imagine this little 4.5-year-old boy, and he had his mom and his dad. He had two supervisors, like if you had two bosses kind of watching you the whole time as you do it and giving you feedback. Oh, we got to sit down here on the bed. Oh, not that. No, that's your t-shirt. We don't pull that onto our legs. We pull our pants on. Okay, here, we put the t-shirt here. Oh, yeah, you got to keep your head. So, and I watched the whole thing, took a ton of notes, but basically it was all the same. This young 4.5-year-old boy had two supervisors giving him feedback the whole time. And so he didn't have rapport with them, and they didn't have rapport with him. Didn't feel good. Felt like a lot of feedback. Felt like too much dialogue. Parents weren't having a lot of fun. He wasn't having a lot of fun. He started to resist. He'd roll around and goof around. He'd run away. They'd chase him. He thought that was fun. They didn't think it was fun, and on and on and on. It was really family circus, and they're lovely, lovely people, and they want to do the best, but they didn't know what to do. So what my feedback was, guys, we're going to switch from supervising to participation. Just this one idea, I'm telling you, totally radically changes family. We're going to switch from supervising to participation. So what do you mean? Well, here's what you're going to do. For the next week, I'd like you to not get dressed when you wake up. I'd like you to not brush your teeth and don't do any of that stuff ahead of time. I'd like you guys to sleep in an extra couple of minutes. And then when you get up, so let yourself have that. And when you get up, I want you to do all of your routine with your son. Wake him up at the same time and do it together. So if you got to go to the washroom, pull him into the washroom and let him see you doing your washroom thing. If you're going to have a shower, if it's possible, pull him into the shower with you. Let him see you soap up, soap him up, let him have a turn, taking the shampoo, and be right in there with him. Participate as if it's a game that you're going to play. If you play tag with someone, someone's it and someone's chasing you. You can't supervise your friend playing tag. You got to play with him. Otherwise, there's no tag game. So think of it that way. So they thought this was very, very different, but they were open to it. And here's what happened. True story. Within about a week to a week and a half, their morning radically changed. Now, this little boy didn't fully learn how to brush his teeth by himself in a week. He didn't learn how to pull on his socks. In fact, we're still working on him pulling on his socks several months later. But here's what happened. They built rapport like they'd never had rapport with him. He was more attentive. He was less struggly, less resistant. He was open to direction. He was open to having them help. Why? Because he was now in the parents' bedroom, sitting on his dad's floor while his dad was pulling on his socks. And he found that kind of interesting and funny that his dad was pulling on socks. He probably didn't even know his dad pulled on socks. Like I said, it's like a child looking up and seeing the teacher coloring and going, wow, that's different. I've never seen the teacher color, didn't know she likes to color. And they start paying attention and looking over and taking an interest. He started really taking an interest in his dad pulling on his socks and his pants and peeing in the toilet. So now he has a model. But also he saw, oh, dad does this too. He doesn't just ask me to do it, but he does it. And dad could comment and child could ask questions. And they had rapport like they'd never had. So the struggle went away at a whole different level. And here's what happened. 2 weeks later, when I checked on them, I said, how's it going? And they said, Jonathan, it's so great. We still have to do a lot for our little guy. We're still there. We're coaching him on, but it doesn't feel like a struggle. We don't have to chase him. And here's the thing. You were totally right. I said, well, what was I right about? They said, we are able to get dressed and do all our thing. And he is too, because there's no struggle, because it's not just us supervising, it actually shifted everything in the way it happened. And we're actually ready now so early that we have about 30 minutes before we even have to leave for school. And before, we didn't have enough time for breakfast. We were bringing breakfast and Cheerios and stuff in the car for a kid to eat on the way to school. So some of you have that probably. You're like, Jonathan, that's what I do every day. My kids eat in the car. Well, that's not super healthy and it's probably not super clean and all sorts of things like that, even though you got to do it. But this family was saying we had extra time. We don't have to eat in the car and we have time. So we're playing before school. We have some time to play with him. In fact, they actually asked me, how should we use that time? And I said, invest it in play. Right. And that's what we're talking about here, participation. Look at this picture of this guy here, this teacher. He's got a tie on and a jacket, but he's got a Merlin hat and he's right down on the floor investing in play, participation. This is in a school, by the way, this picture. It's a real picture. This little girl's playing cymbals, and he's there. There's a real picture taken, and he's participating. Now, he looks more like a principal to me. Maybe he came in for as a guest visit in the class. But anyway, whoever he is, he decided, I'm going to get down and dress up and play this. And you can see the little girl's not paying attention to her peers, but she's looking right at him. And this is a goofy guy playing. So that's phenomenal. We love that. And we think you're going to build rapport in this way. Okay. Build rapport. Now, I want to answer a question to both parents and teachers who are going to ask me this question. Jonathan, I don't have time to do this. I don't have time. I'm in a school. I don't have time to like be participating all the time. I got to supervise. And I just want to say, again, I've been in a couple of hundred classrooms around the world, in different ages, from kindergarten to preschools, right up till high school. And I'm going to suggest to you that it doesn't take any more time to participate than to supervise, number one. And that's because if you're standing watching 5 kids read for even a couple of like seconds, like 20 seconds, and you're there just making sure they're reading the right thing and you're there, those 20 seconds, you could sit down, pull up a chair and sit down and grab a book and supervise just the same way. You have a book and you're right there, and you can still look up and say, hey, Billy, you're reading awesome. And then you read your book and you're counting 1,000, 2, 1,000. And then Sally looks up and sees you reading and you just smile at her and you're still supervising her, right? And maybe Jason right here is swinging his legs and making a lot of noise. So you just whispered him, hey, Jason, I love that you're sitting with your group reading a book. Maybe you could keep your legs still and then everyone else can read their book easier too. But you're there with your book, sitting down at their level as you're doing that. And that's going to build rapport so that they're going to listen to you and pay more attention to you and follow your instructions and be more receptive to you. So I don't think that participating necessarily always has to take more time than if you walked around and supervised. The second little tip I'll give you, both for parents and teachers, is if sincerely you just can't find the time, I would suggest that you schedule it. And if you're a parent, it means you got to schedule it and say, I always have another chore I could do. Come to my house, there's always a dish that can be done, or a plant that can be watered, or a carpet that can be vacuumed. So that's always going to happen. And that will always take up your time. So instead, literally put in your schedule 10-minute playtime with my son. Schedule it in, put it in your schedule. If that's what you got to do, say between this time and this time after school, I'm going to take 10 minutes and stop everything else and just do it. And if you're a teacher and you have a child with autism or 1 or 2 in your classroom, you got to schedule it. Teachers are amazing at being organized and creating schedules and knowing how they have to run their curriculum. And it's already super overwhelmed. But this is worth it, guys. It's worth it. Even if it's 2 minutes, 2 minutes of one-on-one play of a child's favorite activity will build rapport like you can't believe. And it'll be the best investment you've made because you're going to have a child on board in a totally different way. Okay. I just have a couple of more slides I want to share. I'm just going through them really quick. And then I want to tell you about something I'm very excited by. And again, if you've been on one of the webinars, you've heard this already. I'm going to talk about a thing called the Thrive Guide and give you an opportunity to participate in it. So I want to tell you that in just a moment, but I'm just going to share this with you. A question that comes up, and this might come up for both parents and teachers, is, Jonathan, I like your ideas. I get the idea of being an enforcer campaigner rather than or a reinforcer campaigner rather than a policeman enforcing the rules. I get that. That makes sense to me. And I get the piece about participating versus supervising. But to be honest, Jonathan, my child with autism is fairly, as they often say, low functioning or intensive autism, nonverbal, and does a lot of stims, lots of repetitious behaviors, and actually doesn't want me to actually play with him. Avoids me a lot. If I go over, he turns his back. If I try and position for eye contact, he looks away. If I try and join in a game, he'd actually take the cars or the blocks or the books and walk away. How do you do that? What are you going to do then? And so I just wanted to address that very briefly. with a quick anecdote. And the answer from our perspective and what our experience is to sometimes join in their activity very specifically, and sometimes it's just to sit still. It might not take more than a minute. So joining is something that I talk about actually in my book. I wrote a book called Challenging the Myths of Autism. And there's a whole chapter on repetitious behaviors and rituals. I say a whole chapter, it's about 30 pages. You could read it in a Saturday and a Sunday easily. So I recommend that you might want to do that. And I tell a lot of stories and anecdotes, but also a lot of research. And there's a technique called joining with a child with autism or adults with autism, which is where you literally imitate what they're doing, but not in a mocking way, like I might have done in grade 5 with someone in the playground. And, they went, hey, and I looked at them and I went, hey, and I kind of imitated them in a sarcastic way. It's not like that. This is through love and acceptance and a sincere desire to want to join. Okay. So there was a boy that I worked with in Ontario here, again, going back many years, probably more than 15 years. I tell this story in my book, actually, so I won't tell you the whole thing and how it ended, because it ended in a way that you wouldn't expect. But in any case, this boy, he was around, if I remember correctly, I think he was he as old as 12 years old, somewhere around there. But he had a repetitious behavior of rocking like this. He rocked back and forth in a chair, basically a sort of a comfy chair, kind of like the one I'm in now, which is a sort of an office chair. So he had one like that in his basement, and he would spend time doing this. Now his parents didn't like him doing it. They were, I'm going to say, sort of fearful about it and thought the more he did it, the more he would end up doing it for his life. So they had a lot of, concerns around that. And I was asked to come from Toronto down to visit with them. I remember the father was a doctor, the mother was a lawyer, and they had me come. And I just say that because they were quite focused on science and research, as they should be, and that kind of stuff. And I showed up and I said, I'm going to spend 15, 20 minutes with your son. You can kind of watch how I approach. And he was there rocking back and forth. And I knew that I had to build rapport because he wasn't receptive. He was he's doing his own thing. He was in his repetitious behavior. And the way that you build rapport in that sense is you join the child. So I pulled up a chair and I started to rock with him, beside him, back and forth. And almost instantly he looked at me and he smiled, because I think he had never had in his life someone join him like that. He had had a lot of people stop him. I know 100% that his parents would tell him, don't do that. You're going to wreck the chair and all sorts of things because they didn't like it. It's not because they were bad parents or mean. It's just that they had fears in their head, right? And it turns out that the science research on joining, in science, it's called reciprocal imitation therapy or reciprocal imitation training. You can go look it up, RIT. There's a professor with a BCBA and a PhD down in the States who did all this science. It's good stuff. And what do you find when you imitate a child with autism in a sincere, loving way that's not intrusive? Eye contact goes up, rapport goes up, imitation skills of the child goes up. And I knew this, and I've done it for years with success. And it's kind and it's loving and it's accepting and it's unique. I'm not the only person that does it on the planet. There's other programs. But so I did that. And like I said, he had a big smile and we had quite a lot of fun. But anyway, you can read about that story and how it kind of ended and what happened there. But in this case, just very quickly, this picture here, this is the other technique that we use for kids that are very, very in their own world and avoiding you, is a sit still and quiet. So this picture was taken about 10 minutes after I had come into a room with this little boy. Now, this little boy was nonverbal, no communication skills, except for kind of pulling his mom's hand. He spent a lot of time squishing his body between the wall and the couch and trying to get under surfaces and body pressure. And in this room where we were, this is a therapy room, he spent a lot of time looking out the window, which is just behind his back there, and would avoid me like the plague. And so I tried to do some joining. I tried to do some things, but he kept moving away. And so I just sat still for quite a long time. And he took an interest. he hadn't had an adult not give him commands, not try and change him, not go after him, not try and grab his body or take things out of his hand or stop him from running around. So it was very interesting for him, and it created space where he had control. And after a while, it wasn't immediate, but he came right up to me and he wanted to start checking out my face. So I've often had a little scruff. I don't know why, but I do. I do know how to shave, but it's there. And so he thought that texture was really, really cool. And he thought that this was a picture when I did have some hair. So he thought my hair was kind of neat. And he checked out the wrinkles in my forehead. When I lift my eyebrows, I get these wrinkles. So he thought that was really neat that they went up and down. And he just checked me out. And as if he had not checked out a human being before. That's not true, but it was as if that he was so curious and engaged. And his mother, who happened to be nearby, grabbed a camera and started snapping photos of him kind of checking out. And it built into a game. In this picture, I'm sort of, being a bit more animated and getting him to honk my nose and that kind of stuff. But the point here is letting him be in control and explore was a great way to build rapport in this case. As a teacher, and often as a parent, you might not have 10 minutes to sit silent and let a child with autism check you out and come to their own things. But I think if you take the principles that I'm talking about, you can apply them in your situation too. So just these are some ideas that you can think about, hopefully that are useful for you. I do want to just share this one picture quickly. This was a group of teachers now they're in a play therapy center. So this is kind of what their career is play. But they're a lovely group. I saw a little webinar with them actually, and then found this picture. They're down in Pennsylvania. They're just the funnest people. I actually want to go join their team and work with them. I have other projects going on, but they just seem like the best people. And they have some really good stuff going on down there. But I mean, I don't know if for you, what you feel when you look at this picture, but for me, I feel like I'm telling you, I feel like I want to have a barbecue with these ladies. Like I want to hang out, right? You can see that they just look like fun. They're smiling, and it's not always about having big smiles, but they just genuinely like to have fun. And I put this up here. There's a little quote here, Oscar Wilde, life is too important to be taken seriously. Um, from having watched thousands, and I'm telling you, thousands of therapy sessions and classrooms and been in homes, the irony is, as adults, as therapists, educators, parents, because we so much want for children on the spectrum and our students at large to learn, we want the best for them. For some reason, we often get more serious. I don't know. Do we start to supervise too much? I don't know what it is. Even when we intend to be like super loving and charming and nice, but there's a tendency that we can just get into kind of being serious with these kids. And I'm not saying that's any of you. You might not be that person, but it turns out that when we're more serious and more strict and more focused on rules and regulations, we become less attractive. Right? Tonight's talk is about rapport. So we become less attractive to these kids to want to pay attention to us. We become less attractive to want the kids to follow us if we're trying to lead them somewhere. We become less attractive in terms of trust when we hold out our hand. These ladies here, and it's not just about the goofy hats, right? Like in their hearts and their souls and their attitudes, they show up in a certain way that they're not taking it too seriously. The spilled Cheerios, they don't take it too seriously. And as a result, they have kids that pay attention to them. They have rapport. They build rapport. Okay. I'd like to now just tell you very quickly about the Thrive Guide. Okay. And I don't know why. Oh, there we go. And then I'm going to answer questions. There's some questions here, and I want to answer them. So I'm just going to kind of quickly tell you about this opportunity. In the last year, I've started a new project. It's called the Thrive Guide project. And we have a phenomenal team of specialists that have come together, people that are just really super smart. We have a mom with a child with autism, an 11-year-old who's on our team. We have a research coordinator named Annie who has a degree in psychology and psychometrics, and she's really super smart. So we just have a really cool team. And the idea of the Thrive Guide is to give parents and professionals, by the way, because there's a question about, is a Thrive Guide, and I'm going to answer that. Is it useful, even let's say for teachers and professionals? The answer is yes, absolutely, totally. But I will tell you, it was geared towards parents, but all of the information is definitely useful for teachers as well. Okay, just to understand though that the language, let's say, is primarily written towards a parent, but understanding that the content is really quite phenomenal and I think magical. And I'll tell you what it is basically is you'll have the opportunity by being on this webinar. We're going to send you an email and you'll have a link to have a profile in the Thrive Guide. And so, for example, if you're a teacher, you could have a student in mind, a particular student in mind, or you might invite the parents of that student to collaborate with you if they're open, if you have that kind of thing. And you'd say to the parent, hey, listen, I have this opportunity to use the Thrive Guide. It's going to be free. So, that's really cool. And would you want to kind of work with me on this? And then you could have the parent fill out the initial questionnaire, and then you can have access and work with the recommendations that you're going to get from it. But basically, there's these super insightful and unique questions that you'll be asked about the child that again, that you have in your mind as a teacher or that is your own child. And they're going to be questions that come from the 25 years of work that I've done with parents. And my specialty is being able to identify which strategies, which programs, what resources that are out in the world are going to be best for any individual child. That's what I specialize in. And that might sound, I don't know. I don't know what it sounds like. It might sound like, is that possible, Jonathan? How do you, what do you mean in the world? So again, I spent a lot of years, but when I go to an autism conference, I'll tell you what I do, by the way. I'll go to an autism conference. There might be 10 different speakers, and they're speaking on all sorts of different things: auditory integrative training, biofeedback. They might be speaking on methylcobalamin, B12 injections, all sorts of different things. And I listen and I learn in a general way. What is it about? What does it do? And then I'm the guy that puts up my hand, and I always ask, can I ask you, who does this, what's your sweet spot? What's your target group for this? Does it help all people on the spectrum, high functioning, low functioning, verbal, nonverbal, this age, that age, classroom, home base? And I really try and figure out what's the best fit scenario for that program. And if someone tells me it does everything for everybody anytime, I usually don't listen to that. I don't, because I don't think that's true. I think that everything has a space and a place and a time and an order for it. So I try and find that out. And then I go home and I research it and I look and see what the research says. And researchers are usually very good at saying it worked for this, but not for this. And so what happens is over a number of years, I've become sort of like a guy that knows a little bit about a lot of things, just enough to know that this is going to be the right thing for your child. I might not be the speech therapist. In fact, I'm not to actually run that program, but I could tell you the difference between a prompt program and phonetics program and a sight words reading program, and why sight words or phonetics work in different cases. And that's a huge debate. If you're a teacher, you know this out in the field. You often say to a teacher, are you a phonetics teacher or a sight word reader? What side are you on? And in the IMTI program, the program that I teach, I would say I like both, but it depends. It's two words I always use. It depends. Depends on the student. Well, how would you know? How can you assess? They're both better. Research says this and that. And I say, I know. They're both well research based and there's arguments for both. But instead of saying one or the other, how about we say different students might benefit from one or the other? And by the way, maybe at different times. So when you lean into developmental research, and that's my background, developmental psychology, how does the brain develop? How do kids develop? We actually learn that depends on the age of the child, that different senses are more mature or less mature. and that maybe sight word reading might make sense for extremely, extremely young kids. And phonetics, as the language and the tongue starts to develop, might make sense for slightly older. And I'm talking about older as in like when you get to sort of 2.5, 3, when that starts to develop. But before that, there's actually research that shows that as young as 6 months old, children can start to recognize shapes and objects by the outline. And so the outline of a whole sight word is recognizable. There's a fantastic study I looked at where they actually wrote a word, but just the outline of it, like take the word cat and then take a pen and go around the C and the A and the T without the letters in the middle. So you just have the outline. Does that make sense? And that little babies, infants, less than one, could recognize that. They wouldn't know that it's, a cat, but they could recognize that shape over a shape that they had never seen before that wasn't a word. And they know that because the baby smiles and how long they look at it and their sort of galvanic responses and stuff. So, really cool stuff using science to know which would we use when and why. So, the Thrive Guide is set up so that we have all sorts of questions and it's fairly extensive input that you answer. You just go one after another. And then when you press the button that says generate your Thrive Guide, you're given a series of recommendations. Kind of looks like this, a screen that looks like this. You get these recommendations that are specific, individualized for your student or your child. And by the way, they're in order. Order is very important. So it's not just kind of random, here's your 10, but here's number one. So our algorithm in this platform, first of all, chooses the 10 or 15 you're going to get. And then within these 10, these specific individualized 10, it orders them. So there's not a general order. It depends on the bundle you get, and then it knows how to order based on developmental priority and a whole bunch of other reasons. So it's super cool. You kind of know where to start. And you'll see a little video in there. There's a couple of videos, but one of the videos just before you get your treatment map is me talking and saying, hey guys, please pay attention to the order because it's really important. Don't skip down and cherry pick, but start with number one and complete it and then go to number two. So what do you do with these? This just looks like a page with some recommendations. When you click on any one of the recommendations, you'll come to something like this. And there you're going to see an overview of what it is. You're going to get an insight part, a recommendation piece. You can go into learn more and click on and see research about it. And there's activities as well. I want to be clear, this is not another autism program. So this isn't like a full based program where we go from kind of, age 3 up to age 7 and all of these different developmental. It's not that because we don't have the capacity for that. What this is right now at this moment in time, based on what I tell you about my child, what are the top 10 things I should be focusing on and the directions I should be going? Some of these are book recommendations. Some of them are go get a consultation with a biofeedback specialist. Some of them have to do with building rapport, but they're all things that you could do at the home or in the classroom. We think that's super cool. We're so excited. This doesn't exist anywhere. It gives access to parents who are in sort of low resource areas, something right away. And in terms of teachers, I think it's a different kind of metric. It's not just cognitive, sort of like an IQ test. It's not only behavioral. It's deeply relationship based for sure. So I do want to just say for the teacher who posted a question and asked, I work with special needs at the kindergarten level. Could the Thrive Guide work for me? That's really the question. I hope I've answered it. The answer is yes, but just to know that the kind of the language in it, we often say in there, we might say, we recommend that you and your child, spend some more time together, something like that. You just have to read it in that sense and know that, replace with you and your student. But if you can get through that, if you will, again, the ideas and the algorithm will totally work for your student. And the games and the activities you can definitely modify. I mean, if you're a teacher with special needs, which I think you are, then you totally know about accommodations and modifications, and you're probably already used to doing that. Because we are specialists in autism and special needs, I can tell you, I have just spent several months, and I'm not exaggerating, months, putting together the activities and combing through them and rewriting them. We have a specialist out in the East Coast of Canada who has been in this field for as long as I have. And when I say specialist, she's a specialist in activities. This is her sweet spot. She's like every parent's dream or teacher's dream, that you want to like take her for lunch and just ask her questions. And you say, well, what activity could I use for this, or to teach that, or tying shoes, or teaching math? And she just has this encyclopedia of super cool ideas, but she knows how to modify them and accommodate them. So she and I have been working together over the last number of months to give you a whole library of activities that relate specifically to these recommendations. So that's pretty cool. Many of them are already modified and have accommodations attached to them. So hopefully you'll find that really useful if you're a teacher too. And again, we are going to give you a link to this that is free. It's not quite ready yet. We're going to launch it soon, but we want to give that to you for being here, for showing your interest. And we're looking for people really to I'm going to say kind of road test it, take it for a ride, use it. And for the teacher who posted that note, you're going to be one of these people. If you feel that you want to do it, I mean, it's low risk, right? It's not going to cost you anything. It'll cost you about 45 minutes to go through the survey. I think that you'll get insight even from that, just by filling it out. I can't tell you the number of parents that I have done a Thrive guide, but in person, right? Meaning I've showed up and they've hired me just for an hour to listen about the kid and kind of give them some directions. And the number of parents who say, Jonathan, you ask us this question about how much noise is in our house, and it's such an obvious question, but we always have the TV on, like it's just on from the time our child comes home from school, and we never thought about that. And now the recommendation is, you know, turn the TV and the radio off and create some time so that you can hear your child with autism maybe doing some self-talk and pick up on some of that language, or give them a chance for spontaneous language. Because it turns out, and this is how the brain works, when there's sound and ambient noise going on, our brain listens to that. That's just hardwired for every child, including children with autism. They tune in, you listen to that. And when part of your brain is taken up on listening, there's less resources and space and attention focused on output. And so it turns out that when we turn off the TV and turn off the music and those kind of things, and there's silence and more space, we often have more spontaneous language. This is interesting to consider as a teacher in a classroom, because you might be thinking, Jonathan, there's always noise and talking in my classroom. And you might have to have the headphones for the kids with autism to dampen that. And so you might find that kids with autism actually don't talk so much in a classroom as when they go home, if there's more quiet at home. Oftentimes parents will tell me, Jonathan, my kid comes home from school and can't stop talking until the time we have dinner. What do you think's going on? It's the most weird thing. The teacher says he doesn't talk at school. We don't know what's going on. Sometimes, like, well, you know what, your kid's listening a lot at school. There's a lot of instructions being given, other kids saying things, other noises. That's where his physiological brain is focused on trying to process all of that. You may not be able to do something at school about it, but just to know these things. So even the questions, just going through the questions, I'm saying to a teacher and parents, going through the questions of the Thrive Guide could be very interesting and insightful, and then seeing the recommendations. So hopefully that helps. We would love to, if you decide to use this, by the way, as a parent or a teacher, we would love to hear from you and hear feedback. We may reach out to you and say, hey, would you give us some feedback, fill out, this, or just email us, hop on a call, let us know, because we'd love to improve this and make it good, and as good as it could be, with feedback from parents and teachers alike. And so if you feel like you want to do that and participate and be part of just building something, I think that's just so exciting and amazing, to help kids thrive and parents thrive. That's our mission. That's what we're doing. We're just trying to build something really, really big and wonderful and a great resource. So I'm going to just wrap up there. We have been through a lot of stuff tonight. And unless, if there's anyone else that has a question, we do have a couple minutes. Please post another question, and even if it's not on building rapport, but if you thought, oh, I just want to pick Jonathan's brain on how to get this kid to eat cereal in the morning, or how to brush his teeth, or whatever it might be, you can pop it in there. We can answer it. There's probably another person who wants to hear that answer too. So please do that if you want. And then, and just as I'm wrapping up, but we put up here on the screen, first of all, thank you for attending. Thanks for taking your time tonight, and your interest. We do value your time, and we hope that you felt that you got some value tonight, even if it's one thing. even if you walked away, maybe it doesn't all apply, but you walked away with one or two things that can help you to connect with a child with autism a bit more, that would be really exciting for us, and it'd be make us very happy. I often hear people say, Jonathan, what you say it just makes sense, or it's it's so simple. And I'm not saying this that it's a compliment. Often I think it's often people saying, did we just you just told us stuff that's so kind of obvious and we know, like, don't you have some like really kind of rocket science stuff? And I wanted just to say that honestly, to say, if some of these things seem obvious, sometimes what happens is, it might be entertaining or interesting, but people walk away and they may not action it right away because it's so obvious. Like, go and cheer and be positive. Like, okay, yeah, I got that. But I want to just say this as a final note is, what I shared with you tonight is a culmination of many, many years of trying lots of different things. So I don't benefit from, I don't have trademarks. I don't make any money from you going and playing with your kids. So there's no benefit to me to share this over that. And what I'm sharing with you is having tried hundreds of other strategies. And my mission, my only mission, what I do is to try and help children with autism and the adults trying to help them. And I'm picking things that are general because I don't know your student or your child directly, of course, right? So you might be thinking, well, how do you know this is going to work with this? It's because I picked two things tonight that I know work with every single child to some degree, a little bit, and with some kids, a lot of it. And I shared some stories with you that show you that they can help a lot. And in some cases, maybe less so. But you will get some benefit if you do these things. So, as simple as they are, I want to again encourage you to put them in your calendar or write a note for yourself, put a post-it note up. You can do this. You can get some traction with these. And then send me an email and let me know how it goes. Send me an email. I love stories. I love hearing from people. There's an email at the bottom, info@thehipinc.com. We'd love to hear from you. Send us your story. Could be a one-liner. Hey, Jonathan, this stuff works. Or, hey, Jonathan, got a little bit of traction. By the way, here's some feedback. If you talk with another parent, tell them this. Because that's what I'm doing. I'm just sharing with you information that I've learned from so many other people like you who are, either a teacher or a parent in experiencing this live. So again, thank you for attending. There is a little link at the top that says check out our upcoming webinars. So you can check those out. If you've already attended them, we will let you know when we have some more coming up with different kind of topics if you like this, and if it's been helpful for you, okay? So I'll leave you with that. We'll leave this up for another minute. I'm going to log off and say goodnight, but thank you very much again for your time. And we hope that you enjoyed the Thrive Guide and it's useful for you.